featured guest. It is featured guest time on today's Smart Chiropractor Show. Jason and I have the opportunity to sit down with Dr. David Graeber to talk about adjusting seminars and patient care. David's a great chiro up in the Northeast. I guess he called Jersey the Northeast. A couple years back, he invited me up to speak. It was awesome. He's a great guy, teaches adjusting seminars, is a practicing doc, is one of those gentlemen that it takes action, that wants to make an impact in the profession. Jason and I had the opportunity to sit down, chat with him about adjusting seminars, about techniques, where docs are doing it correctly, where there might be areas of opportunity, and much, much more. So without further ado, here is Jason and myself's conversation with Dr. David Graeber. Hey docs, I'm Dr. Jeff Langmaid here with my co-host, Dr. Jason Deitch. Thanks for tuning in for today's Smart Chiropractor Show. Today's featured guest, we have a gentleman that I've known for quite a few years, who's up in the great Northeast, I guess you could say, Dr. David Graeber. Dave, thanks for taking some time and coming out with us today.
My pleasure, Jeff, Jason.
All right. So you are a man that's involved in quite a few different things. You've been involved in your state organization. I know I've seen you teaching your own seminars. You have a practice. I'd love to trace it back a little bit because I know there's so many docs out there that you go somewhere, you see somebody on stage and it's exciting, and maybe there's docs out there that love to get involved with it. As you began getting out there teaching technique seminars, how'd you have the guts to get in front of everybody, number one, and number two, what were some of the first steps you maybe took that led you to where you are today?
Well, I'm an accidental instructor in a sense. I mean, I taught for a year at what was formerly known as New York Chiropractic College in the 80s. Yeah, I've been around that long. And worked a little bit with the sports diplomate. And, about 18 years ago, I broke my arm. Don't ask me the details. It's pretty embarrassing. It was, I had to take some time off the office. So I started hiring associates, or started looking for associates, and I did a lot of extremity work and a lot of motion palpation type work. So I was interviewing them. I came across a number of different doctors, and none of them, they lasted a day. I said, thank you, go away. And I found one woman who came in, and she was excellent, and we worked. And then after I started getting my mobility back after a couple of weeks, I started showing her a few things, and she was very appreciative. After a couple of weeks, she said, you should teach this. I'm going, now I just came off the diplomate, the first chiropractic sports diplomate program. 300 doctors all over the country, top notch. I'm like, I hung out with people, everybody knows this. And she goes, no, they don't. I took extremity adjusting. I never learned any of this. So I put together a 3-hour course. I contacted New York Chiropractic College. And the 3-hour course, I found it was actually more like a 10-hour course because we had to go back to the basics, the very basic basics. And from there, I just got requests, and I started doing more and more work with different state societies, different organizations. And next thing I know, it's, here it is, 2022, and I'm still doing it.
That is awesome. David, what do you think is missing for most chiropractors out there and what they're learning versus what you're teaching? What are you teaching that sort of helps chiropractors go next level or gain their confidence or expand their service offerings? What is it that you think is sort of lacking out there that you're really able to sort of fill in for them?
Jason, I hate to say it, but basics. I'm talking basics. And I've always said that chiropractic practice is centered around the adjustment, not subluxation. That's a whole nother discussion. But one thing I've noticed, it doesn't matter what philosophy you have, what practice style you have. When we come together and chiropractors get better at learning how to adjust, a lot of that stuff disappears. And I learned that by doing it. I started watching, one camp and this camp, and they all came together when they all started getting better at getting adjusted. And, we're basically a trade where you learn on the job. You graduate school, maybe get an associateship, but you're in practice and you're learning how to develop your skill while you're making a living. And so, you get like a funnel effect. You learn all these different skills, and then over the years, you get less and less and less and less. And now you have a handful of things that you do. And where do you go at that point to get better? And that's one of the things we started with the seminars is that, okay, let's do hands-on. Every joint in the body we're going to go over. And how to evaluate it, how to treat it, a care plan. And a lot of doctors, what they're using in their practice is they're not using something based on what they're finding on the exam. They're using kind of almost like a rote, like, okay, everybody's going to get a 12-visit plan or a 24-visit plan. They're not specifying it to the patient and the condition. But they can't a lot of times because they don't really know how to evaluate that, how to judge prognosis. But once you start to doing that, a lot of that comes from the hands-on, the daily hands-on grinding skills that we do every day, and improving that. Doctors get better at actually what they're doing, and it's really I love seeing it. I get a lot of joy watching doctors get better, get more confident, feel empowered, understand how to communicate better. Their patients, also other professionals, and also with themselves about what they're doing.
Yeah. I love that, Dave. And one thing that comes to mind for me as you describe that is there's two aspects of anytime you're adjusting a patient. It's what's delivered, right? The force, the vector, all of those factors that are involved in what you are delivering to the patient as a manner of speaking. The second is your own body. And I had this discussion the other day with a couple docs, and I said there are a lot of broken down chiropractors when they get older, probably due to poor adjusting skills. Now, the docs I was talking to, they disagreed with me, but they said if you're adjusting in a proper ergonomic fashion, you could adjust high volume for decades and never had an issue. Obviously, everybody's bringing in their own, injuries, their own, how they're built, etc. But what have you seen with that? Not necessarily what's being delivered to the patient. We can talk about that in a few moments. But the doctor, the chiropractor, him or herself, do you find, how do you judge, injury, ergonomics, doing it correctly, doing it incorrectly? Yeah. What are you seeing out there?
Well, that you bring up a really great point. But you're always gonna find doctors who are they're just bull. They go in, they adjust even the volume day in, day out, year in, year out. That's the minority. That is the absolute minority. There's a reason why, some of these seminars are like, hey, get yourself to see 100 patients a day, see 80 patients a day, 100, 200 patients a day. These docs, in general, unless they're doing something like an activator or something very, very light demand on their body, they're not doing it for long. That's what I found out for a fact. They either burn out or they break down. And that is what happens in the majority of cases with that. A lot of docs I see, yeah. We have the walking wounded of chiropractic. This profession takes a toll. I'm one of them. A few years ago, I had a herniated disc in my lumbar spine. I didn't know if I'd be able to continue practicing. Fortunately, everything turns into an opportunity. I actually learned a whole lot of things. I could taking care of this by taking care of myself and getting treated myself, doing McKenzie work, some of the work by McGill, the stabilization, which I kind of got away from and wasn't doing. Learned how to do that, got treated by other chiropractors doing different things that I did. And that was a little bit of a game changer for me because I looked at my practice like, oh, who else could we do this to? But actually, back to your original point, yeah, bad ergonomics is endemic. Quite candidly, I did not practice for 6 months after school graduating because I actually had a wrist injury from basically some very bad instruction, particularly Gonstead. And again, I still have it. It lingers on. Injuries abound in this profession. A lot of it is from bad technique, and we all get to bad habits, myself included. So you need somebody to give a feedback mechanism. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons going to seminars can do that. And that's one thing I never understand. A doctor will come to a technique seminar, and I'm like, good, let me work with you. And they sit back and they watch. They watch me adjust people. I'm going, look, I know this. That's why I'm here. I want you to do this. And so they got another group of people come in there, and they'll do it, and then they'll spend the rest of the time like a coffee clutch. And I'm like, wait a minute. Come here. Let me watch you. Show me what you do. Forget about what I do. Show me what you do. Let me show you what you do better. If you don't want to take anything from here. And I don't even care what I'm teaching. I'll show, I do side posture. We're doing upper extremity. You have a problem with side posture. Let's go over it. How's your cervical adjust? And doctors who do that, they never walk away not being a little bit better. And the first thing I work on is ergonomics. Yeah. And the second thing I talk about is core and conditioning, because that's another thing that gets kind of like brushed aside. We're athletes. We are in a physically demanding, we are the blue collar of healthcare. And you have to keep your body, if you're not putting in a good 15 to 30 minutes every day of core and structural strengthening in your body, it's going to break down eventually, no matter how good a technician you are, because there's a demand that's being put on us. But it doesn't take a whole lot to actually do that, get your technique a little bit better. One simple thing any doctor can do is put a mirror in their adjusting room so they can look at themselves, not to see how good their haircut is or how good their makeup looks or how bitchy the outfit they have it, but look at yourself when you're over a patient. Are your shoulders up? Is your head aligned? look at your own positioning with that. It's a very stupid, simple thing. Or Phil, say to a patient, listen, I'm going to a technique seminar. They want to watch my technique in action. Would you mind if I film this visit? You can have them sign a release, and they do that, and then you can watch it. Now, first of all, I tell doctors all the time, do that. I tell patients the same thing. Videotape yourself. Look, I'm dating myself. Record yourself at your workstation. Record yourself doing your golf swing, and let me take a look at it. Few of them do, but doctors don't. And one reason they probably look at it and just get nauseated. You're like, oh God, I'm not sending this in. And I don't really care, because I have seen so many things which I feel like I'm saving a career when I start getting involved with doctors to do this. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. There's always going to be outliers in this profession. You're going to get me out of soapbox now, but this profession, a lot of times, if it's working for me, I just think that I'm doing it the right way and everybody can do it. That is so much chiropractors have it. And we just live in our own narrow view box, not realize that a lot of chiropractors are successful in certain areas and certain domains of practice, but they're outliers. They are the exception, not the rule. You guys see it all the time. Like, you can do marketing. And I'm a client of yours, and I love your service. And I'm thinking, why do I love it? Because I could never do this. I can never do what you do. A patient walking, hey, I got the email that you sent out, and they started talking about it, and I'm embarrassed because I didn't look at the email. I don't know what they're talking about a lot of times, but it's bringing conversation in. So I'm like, okay, am I going to continue doing my marketing? No. I said I'm going to get smart. I'm going to hire a smart chiropractor. That, by the way, that is an unsolicited plug for you guys, because I love your service, by the way.
Thank you.
But the same thing, any domain, marketing, communications. New doctors. When I find new doctors right now, if the patient leaves, but I did everything right, they hit all the check boxes, they evaluated it right, they covered their bases, they had the right care plan, patient doesn't stay. And I'm saying, you know what, doc? You did everything right, but you weren't right. You didn't say something right. It didn't come across correctly. You didn't read the patient right. Well, I said this, this, and this. Okay, what kind of a patient were you dealing with? Did you have an emotional fit? Did you really feel comfortable with them? Did they feel comfortable with you? What was your staff? If you have no staff, what does your office look like? They're going to make all these judgments are going to be contributing to the decision to stay with you or not. And you thought your technique was great. I know a lot of great technicians, but their technique hurts. And my first chiropractor, not my first chiropractor who inspired me to go to school, he was a flying 7, 50-second adjustment. And I said to him one time, when I was in school, I came back and was like, I'm learning this, this, this. He goes, let me tell you something. You do that, your patients will be so much in pain, they won't come back. That's a very, very uncomfortable. You want to toggle people? You want to do this? No, I do this because it's not the best thing for the patient, maybe, but I know that I can get results and they're going to come back for it. And I thought that was absolutely crazy. Now, years in practice, I realize what he's talking about. Some patients, doing good is good enough, and trying to be the best, sometimes they're uncomfortable. Some patients will just leave. Did I answer your question? Because we were off on a tangent.
You did. David, I want to go back to, you nailed basically confidence is the name of the game. And basically you said, there's two parts to that. One is you're adjusting, and obviously every chiropractor should be as great of an adjuster as they possibly can be. But you also mentioned communication, and we're starting to touch on that. So knowing your years in the profession and years of experience in leadership positions and coaching, training, et cetera, what are some of the common, I'm sure you have opinions on how most are doing it one way, and there's probably a better way to be communicating. So what are some of the faults you find that most chiropractors are falling into, and what are the solutions? What are the better ways to communicate that most chiropractors would benefit from learning?
A chiropractor said to me, he goes, you want to be successful? Yeah. For the patient here, shut up and listen. And I'm like, but chiropractors talked about, we're trying to put our philosophy into them, our protocol, our theories. And sometimes we try to press them how much we know because we're insecure. And he was like, oh, I'm really a real doctor. I use big terms. I actually know how to read an MRI. And they don't care about that. Number one, listen to the patient. Number two, watch the patient. Watch their body language. Watch their facial expression. When you say something, you're going to get a reaction back. It might be a flat reaction. You don't know. You got to know that patient. Their eyelid went up. That means they actually are excited. Some people are very emotive. Some people are not. Some people get it, some people don't. Some people, you say something and you know what, they gave the signal like, this is probably going to be my last visit. You got to pick up on that and know that. And these are all communication skills, and they're not easily learned, and they're not learned instantly. Some people are natural. They're natural born salespeople. They're natural born caretakers. Most of us, myself especially, have to learn this day to day, patient to patient, encounter by encounter. Yeah. So communication, I would say, starts with, listen and watch, and then wait, because you're going to get a reaction to what they're saying or thinking. Maybe they said something, and all of a sudden you're like, you want to jump down, or you want to give them a whole speech and a whole education. You got to wait. What can they take in right now? Yeah. And then listen when you realize they've had enough. And some people, you could give them a whole dissertation on, you can show their MRI and they're asking question. You're like, hey, man, this is almost like I'm teaching a class. Mm-hmm. And others just want to know, hey, I've got a bad bone and you can fix it. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Let's go. And that's all they need. That's all they have to get. And it's a fine art, and it's a never-ending art. And what I've noticed, I've been practicing, I'm going to admit it, but it's like over 35 years I've been out of school. And this year is going to be my 35th year actual private practice. The audience changes. People change. They communicate. They understand things differently. Some things that might have worked 5 years ago or 10 years ago doesn't work right now. It doesn't get through. They don't understand it. Terminology is differently. I have a 70-year-old daughter. Believe me. I'm like, what do you mean? I say things and she looks at me like, what? I'm like going, what? And she says things like, well, how could you think like that? It's a whole new generation. And, she said the other day, Dad, you should be on TikTok. And I'm like, I have never seen it. And she watching, showing these TikTok. I'm like, honestly, I don't get it. I really don't. But I don't have to get it. They get it. I got to get that they get it. And same thing with patient education. You come up with all kinds of, forget all that. There are some bases that don't change. One is rapport with the patient. And that is, listen, watch, get a sense, feel, and then wait, process, and then respond. And respond in a way they can understand. Yeah. And respond in a way that you can have a next step. Yeah. So and it's bite-sized a lot of times. Attention span, like I think we were just talking about that before. You say, well, your segments here are like 15 minutes, so that's good. It's like that's about the amount of like attention span I think most people have. We're actually here like this. We're not shifting scenes back and forth, and it's not some kind of a kaleidoscopic explosion in the background to keep attention. It's harder today to grab attention and keep it, for any length of time. So you got to know how to do things in bite size and slow down. You sat down, you get a 20-minute report of findings. You're not doing that today. Very few people are going to stand for that. You don't need to do that today. With the technology we have, we can actually start giving people little bits and pieces: email, text, videos, computer. Give them something to look at home. They're Googling stuff anyway. Right. They Google all of us before they see us. Yeah.
You are right about that. Meeting the patients where they're at is really the big takeaway, I think, with what you're describing is really, meeting them where they are at, not where you are at as a provider is so critically important. But I have a question. I have a gnawing question. As a technique guy, what's your favorite adjustment? What's the adjustment, technique, however you want to define that? What's the most satisfying to you when you deliver it every time? You're just like, this is my wheelhouse.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. What's your $1 million go-to?
That's it.
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I love side posture. I have 5 different kinds of side postures that I teach. And I honestly, after a while, thinking, wow, I haven't done this one in a while. Let me start to implement that. I think it'll be just as good as doing the other one. So I like to keep it new and fresh because you know what? It's not talked about a lot, but this can be a very mundane profession of what we do. A lot of what we do is pretty rote. And one of the things about knowing a plethora of techniques is, wow, if I can have 5 different ways to accomplish this, then that actually keeps my interest up as a doctor as well. But getting really good at every one is the key, and not doing something unless you're exceptionally well at it. Problem is, like I said, we're a learn on the job profession. I mean, I love first ribs. first because the effects of that are fabulous, and it's endemic in most of our patients that I've found.
Yeah.
So that's two. Shoulder, acromioclavicular, scapulothoracic releases. The feet, I mean, I love it. I love adjusting feet because patients love it. And it's the gravity affects your spine, it affects your feet. Primarily the two biggest beaten up areas of the human body. So I think that it's great when once you start working on that, forget it. People are like going, wow, you're different. You start working extremities, especially feet and especially shoulder. Patients know immediately. You don't have to say they know you're different. They know like he's different. He takes care of everything. And that's how subtle it can be. Because a lot of, let's face it, we're known as being chiropractors, back doctors. If we're lucky, neck doctors. But full body, anything hurts you. If I have something wrong, you'll fix it. That's the message that I want to get across to people, so they don't, they come to me. My finger, I jam my finger. Can you do something? Yeah, I can actually. And well, that's the reason for today's visit. I'll take it. I'll take that.
David, as chiropractors are listening to this now and they're thinking to themselves, one of the things I loved about what you just said was, what I got out of it was one of the ways you stay fresh after 30 plus years in practice is to always be learning and growing yourself, whether it's your adjustment side, communication side, you're challenging yourself to be better, which keeps you interested as opposed to, getting into the mundane routine, over and over and over again. How would you prioritize to somebody listening? Well, that makes sense to me. What should be my next step? Should I get better at, I guess, communication, which I think it's a perfect answer. The best way to communicate is to listen better. Is it communication? Is it adjusting skills and learning, 5 different types of side posture? Or what would you recommend somebody kind of go, okay, you know what? I want to challenge myself. I want to sharpen my blade. I want to get better at something to keep myself interested and obviously for people's benefit. How would you prioritize what those things are? What would be a good next step for somebody?
Well, I think probably, well, I don't know what's the next step. But I'll tell you what I do. I have like 12 areas that I have marked down, and I have skill sets developed in each. Technique, diagnostics, personal communication, office communication, staff communication we have in there, equipment that I want to either have or upgrade. I forgot the rest of offhand, but so I literally have my planner, and I have, okay, what am I going to do? And every 4 to 6 weeks, I try and do something to upgrade. Oh, research, that was the other thing. I run a Facebook group called Chiropractic Practice Research. It was something I put together because I was doing all this data collection years ago. I think I started 10 to 12 years ago for my lectures. I said, wait a minute, I think somebody else might be interested in this. Let me just throw it up there. And I just threw it up there, and people joined up, and it was pre-evidence-based chiropractor like Jeff has. But I'm like, and I just love to see what's the latest, what's out there, because the research is exploding. That's a great step to find out that, hey, what we're doing, there's a lot of backing behind a lot of what we're doing. And there's a lot of challenges behind a lot of what we're doing. We've got to know both. And so I would start off by not taking one thing, but take a number, maybe 3 areas you practice. Now, I personally think one would be technique. Another would be patient communication back and forth. And third one, I would say, would probably be kind of like goal setting, prioritizing, executive function. Because most people who run a practice, we are mostly solo entrepreneurs or solopreneur practices. And we have to lead and manage ourselves and our patients and our staff and everything else. So develop those kind of skills first. And those are probably the 3 core areas I think most chiropractors would get a lot of benefit for. And then just do one thing each. Every week, just take one thing. Don't overwhelm yourself. Take one thing. Yeah. Like I tell docs, I say, when I get done the seminar, I say, look, make it, let's say it's a lower extremity seminar. I say, great, guess what we're going to do? We're going to do Monday. You go back to the office on Monday. It's going to be long axis hip Monday, talus Tuesday. You're going to have a mortise joint Wednesday, fibula Friday, and just check it. Just check every patient for that. You know what you're going to find? There's got to be some dysfunction there. Then address it and just work that in that way. Communication, yeah. Ask a question. That's the best thing. You ask a question and practice not responding. which is very hard for most chiropractors. To be successful in this profession, you have to be somewhat extroverted. If you're introverted, you get like, I'm very introverted, but you have to learn how to express yourself and be extroverted. You put yourself out there. But you also need to know when to not let the patient express it, listen, and then act on what they said. Try and work into something of what they said into your care plan and communication, or they may tell you something about their lifestyle that you could go beyond being just a technical chiropractor and actually help them. And that will bond them to you like nothing else. Yeah. So I would say those kind of areas. I don't like the one thing, Jason, because there's so many multiple domains in practice, especially these days, and it's a moving target. So start having every week, take one thing and just work on it. And it's great. Come to you guys, say, go to the like the Facebook site, they put up there, hey, what is everybody working on for patient communication this week? What are great questions you ask patients? Yeah. How, who's working on sprained ankles this week, or who has thoracic outlet syndrome patients? Who has a great move for that? We have communities right now, especially with social media, that we don't have to stay here and be by ourselves. We can reach out and get other minds involved. Yeah.
That is a great take-home message, Dave. I could not agree more. As chiropractors, we tend to become siloed, and whether you're hopping on social media, whether you're driving down the street or going upstairs, communicating with other docs, I think is fantastically important. My big question, I guess, to the docs listening and watching, to take on what you said, Dave, is, Doc, what is going to be your one thing? So you might start out with a handful of items that you want to work on throughout this year, chip off one each day, and before you know it, you'll be a lot better off as you look back as the days become weeks, become months, become years. So, Dave, on behalf of Jason, myself, and our entire Smart Chiropractor team, really appreciate you coming on. And docs, keep an eye out when you see Dave Graber teaching a technique at a seminar. Be sure to hop into that class. This is a man with an exceptional amount of experience, and you'll learn something new that might prolong your career. It'll definitely make you better with the care you're given with your patients. Dave, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Great interview with Dr. David Graber. Great guy doing great things for our profession, who's put in the time, put in the work to build the skills and expertise. And privately, sometimes when I see all the letters and docs spend so much time on the techniques, I feel like they should be spending more time in marketing. But there's something to be said about dialing in your skill set, delivering that care, delivering those adjustments with confidence, with good ergonomics, so you can continue to do it for as long as possible, and doing it in a way that enables you to get the best results possible. Jason, great interview with Dr. Graber. What were your thoughts?
I totally agree with you, Jeff. It would seem obvious and logical if we were living in a normal world that if you are a great technician, you have great skills, you provide great adjustments, and people get great results, that should be enough to build a great practice. And in some cases it is, but in most cases it's not. Unfortunately, the reality is that if it just took, helping people get well to be the barometer of whether they were going to refer all their friends and family, no chiropractor would ever need a new patient again. So I think you're right. I think knowing and having the right skills is basically an essential, but it's not everything that's going to go into building your practice today. You do have to be a great communicator as well. People have to understand why they should come to see you before they come in for what they see you for. And that's just the reality of where we're in. And it's not exclusive to us. The reality is the pharmaceutical industry spends billions of dollars communicating to people why they should come in and take their purple pill or whatever the new latest thing is. And we don't put a lot of collective effort into, quote, marketing/communicating who we are, what we do on any kind of global basis. We're in a sort of cottage industry where it's really more up to each individual practice to sort of say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm about, here's what I can offer you. But kudos to David, great job, great guy. And yes, having the skills, sharpening your blade is an essential. It's just not enough to be everything. Great interview.
You got to have the skills to pay the bills, as they say. and if you're looking to fine-tune your adjusting skills, be sure to check out David at a seminar near you. Hey, if you like that video, be sure to subscribe to The Smart Chiropractor. We are posting videos on how you can market your chiropractic practice in a way that teach and invites consistently. We have found that is the magic formula to big time growth. So if you like this video, be sure to comment down below, smash that subscribe button, or visit us at thesmartchiropractor.com.